Hey everybody, it's D from D&D Dishes, and today the D stands for deposits and withdrawals, you know, like a bank. I'll be honest with ya, I have a lot of books banked up over the last couple of months just because I couldn't fit it into my unboxing videos, they were far too long as it is. Why did those Black Friday sales have to be so darn good? So let's make a few withdrawals today and see what's inside. This is the Al-Qadim adventure called Golden Voyages. It was the first adventure released and it was written by David Z. Cook. States on the back of the box that there are 6 booklets filled with mini adventures contained in this box. So let's open it up and have a look. There are indeed 6 booklets contained within, along with some colorful posters and artwork. So this looks like a DM screen. So we have the player facing side, which has a piece of artwork containing a genie. And on the side that's facing the DM, we have some tables from the 2nd edition Player Handbook and Dungeon Master Guide. These are the typical type of tables which are contained on the 2nd edition Dungeon Master screens. The only table which is unique to Al-Qadim is this first one, which tables the Sha'ir spell chances. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Now, first of all, most 2nd edition campaign setting box sets would have a DM screen included in the box. The initial Al-Qadim campaign setting was released in a standalone book. It was not released as a box set, so therefore there was no way for them to include a DM screen. So they bundled the DM screen with the first Al-Qadim adventure box set released. The DM screen that's typically included in a campaign box set has 4 panels, whereas this only has 3 panels. And it also comes with a poster map. So this is a map of the Crowded Sea, and it contains 4 island clusters. We have the Al-Satan, the Genie's Claws, the Nada Al-Hazan, and the Steaming Isles. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Al-Qadim setting, it was released in 1992 and it's intended to be an Arabian setting. It takes place in the continent called Zakhara, which is canonically located to the south of Faerun, on the same world as Forgotten Realms. It was inspired by the tales of 1001 Night, Aladdin, and the Adventures of Sinbad. As a matter of fact, the adventure even begins with a quote from someone named Sinbad the Seaman. So let's take a look at book 1. So firstly, it explains about the region. These Al-Qadim adventures also typically expand on the region of the world that the adventure sets in, provides you with some new lore on world building and the current events. So this first book is 32 pages, and it provides the expansion on the lore of this region of the Crowded Sea. It goes into some of the different factions. And it talks about how to run a naval game. We have navigation, locations, tools, harbors, prices, pirates, hazards, repairs, castaways, getting a new ship, and the crew, mutiny, and cargo. Book 2 and the subsequent books are all 16 pages. This book focuses on the islands of Al-Satan. That's one of the island clusters that we looked at on the map. So it talks about the different types of rulers. Halfway into the book, the adventure starts, so we only have about 8 pages devoted to the adventure, so this is why they call it a mini adventure on the back of the box. The write-up is quite brief, as back in the 2nd edition, you are encouraged to use the material that's been provided to you to expand on your own game, so this is a good start on running a game set in these islands. Then we have book 3, which focuses on Nada Al-Hazan, another group of islands that we saw on the map. Once again, halfway into the book, the adventure starts. This adventure is called A Night in Town, and then further on we have another adventure called The Isle of Sadness. These adventures are structured where it provides you several events that can take place, and you can use all of these adventures together in a sandbox type of style as your characters are traveling between the different islands. And then book 4 is the Genie's Claws. So this book starts the adventure on page 4 called Broken Talons. And this one is fairly long. And then towards the end, we have another one called Servitude and another one called Shark Food. And then book 5 focuses on the Steaming Isles. The start of each book provides you some of the local tales and some of the rumors about the island. So you can also use that to build your own adventure as well. There's hardly any artwork in these adventures. And book 6 is the map booklet. There we have a trade route map for the different cities. Some more maps on how the islands connect to each other, with some artwork for the ships. I feel like some of these maps are intended to be printed in color, whereas when it's printed in grayscale, it's very difficult to read, even in person. So there you have it. And that is Al-Qadim Golden Voyages, the sandbox adventure, across 4 cluster of islands. Let's move on to the next Al-Qadim box set. This one is called Cities of Bone and it was released in 1994. This one and the Golden Voyages one were the only ones that I was missing, apart from the one that's called Reunion, which was an RPGA exclusive. So we have a catalog, and these are all the books contained within. So in here we should have 6 illustrated cards. This is a map of the Grey Jungle and surroundings, and on the back we also have some dungeon maps. A map of the region, and more maps on the back. The Jade Palace, Temple of Ishitu, Plaza of Eternity, Catacombs of Moradask, which looks like a maze or a dungeon, the Ruins of Moradask, and on the back is a pyramid and a map of the Haunted Lands. Let's open up this map. And this is a map of the Jade Palace of the Necromancers. And then we have Tomb of the Crocodile Princess and the Bone Pavilion with the Talisman of Sharjah. So this one in the middle looks like it's the Monster Compendium. We have the Princess Ophidia. And it looks like most of these are just NPCs that you would encounter in this adventure. They're not exactly monsters. If you watch any of my other unboxing videos, I've done several of the other Al-Qadim adventures. So the format of the previous box, Golden Voyages, where it released 6 different booklets, that's actually unusual. Because that was the first one, I guess they were just still figuring out what they want to do with these Al-Qadim adventures. But most of the time it comes in 2 separate booklets. One is for the campaign setting, and one is for the adventure. And the Monster Compendium and the posters and the cards and the artwork are on top of that. So this book talks about the tombs and the City of Dead. We've got the Necropolis of Sokar. Here we go. Chapter 3 goes through the City of the Dead. So this book provides you the background lore with the City of Dead. And then in this section in particular, it's designed to be used with the poster map that we just looked at, because that's the Jade Palace of the Necromancers. And then you have the numbered entries which correlates to the numbers shown on the map. And this provides you the explanation for all the key locations of that map. So you can use the City of the Dead as a location in your game. And then we have the City of the Sun, Treasures of Moradask. Moradask is the name of one of the places that we looked at that was on the cards. So this book is 32 pages, and even though Al-Qadim is an Arabian-inspired setting, it looks like that they're going for a bit more of an Egyptian flavor, as these murals, and we also have the hieroglyphs, looks a lot more Egyptian inspired. And when we look through the art cards, we also had what looked like a pyramid. Seems like with this module that they're expanding into more of the Egyptian flavored setting. And then we have the adventure book, which is divided into 6 chapters. This book is 64 pages. And unlike the previous product, Golden Voyages, where it looks like it was divided into many short adventures, this is more of an adventure campaign. First chapter is called Suitable Donations, and it says it's designed for a relatively inexperienced party of players from 1st to 4th level. So this is good. You do actually want entry level adventures in your campaign because it provides you a good foundation and good setup on starting in a setting that you might have never run a game in it before, so it eases you in. And then we move on to chapter 2 called The Treasure Pit. As you just saw, chapter 1's not very long, probably maybe only 5 or 6 pages, and for chapter 2 you're already expected to be between 4th and 6th level, so there might be an expectation for the DM to fill in the gap with some additional adventures of their own, and this type of structure was not uncommon back in 2nd edition. So chapter 3 is designed for between 3rd and 6th level, so the recommended level requirement is actually lower than chapter 2. And then we have chapter 4, The Shattered Statue. And this one is designed for between 4th and 7th level. And here we see the pyramid, and she looks like the princess. And then we move on to chapter 5, Court of the Necromancers. And this is for characters between 6th to 9th level. So you see the recommended level is steadily increasing. We have a fair amount of artwork in this adventure module, which is somewhat unusual. There's usually not a lot of artwork in these. Because I've flipped through all of the Al-Qadim box sets, I would say that this one would have the most amount of artwork for the adventure. They're usually not this generous, but they also don't tend to be as sparse as Golden Voyages either. With chapter 6, we move on to a recommended level between 8th and 10th level. So outside of the gap between chapter 1 and chapter 2, there don't seem to be that much of a gap between the rest of the chapters. So it seems like you're able to run this adventure mostly on its own. And there you have it. That was the Cities of Bone. And the next Al-Qadim supplement that we're going to look at is called The Complete Sha'ir's Handbook, released in 1994. The Sha'ir is a wizard kit that is exclusive to the Al-Qadim setting, although calling them a wizard is quite generous. Due to the mechanics and the framework of 2nd edition, all classes need to be able to fit into one of the 4 archetypes. We have warriors, wizards, rogues, and priests. Of these 4 class archetypes, the Sha'ir is the closest to a wizard. But this class actually has a lot of unique mechanics and has received a complete handbook. This book is 124 pages long and is similar to the other class handbooks back in 2nd edition. Now, to explain a Sha'ir, they are a magician, however they're not able to use spells themselves. At level 1, they summon an elemental familiar called a Djinn that will do all of their bidding for them. Even though they're not able to cast spells themselves, they still have access to magic due to the familiar. The familiar will travel through its elemental network, liaise with the other elementals, trying to source that spell for the Sha'ir. The chance of success is based on the level of the Sha'ir and also the spell being requested. Once the Djinn is successful at locating that spell, it will return and the Sha'ir will have 30 minutes to be able to use that spell. Otherwise, it dissipates and is wasted. Now, what's interesting about these spells is that you're not limited to just the spells that's available to wizards. You can also spells that's beyond the capabilities of a wizard of the same level, but these spells impose a penalty on your success rate, so they're harder to come by. So this book expands on the Sha'ir class further. It provides additional insight into the history and background of the class, how their powers work, how the elemental network works, expanded powers, expanded lore, so on and so forth. Now, this class sounds really cool and really flavorful and definitely fits the setting, as genies are the big wigs in the Al-Qadim setting. And of course, this class is not without its detriments. First of all, it takes time for your familiar to search for the spell. If it's a common spell, the gem will return in a matter of rounds. If it's a wizard spell that's beyond the capabilities of an equivalent level wizard, it will take a matter of turns. If it's a priest spell or a spell that is foreign to these lands, it can take a matter of hours. And bear in mind, if your familiar is successful in retrieving that spell, you have 30 minutes to use it. Because of this delay, I don't know how well this class will function in combat, as even the simplest spell will take at least 2 rounds for your familiar to obtain. If you're a 5th edition player, you might be familiar with the Genie Warlock. So the Genie Warlock is pretty much a dumbed down version of the Sha'ir. It has the same kind of flavor, but not so much the mechanics. I had a player in my 5e game that thought the Genie Warlock was really cool, so that's why I know a little bit about them. So this book is not exclusively for the Sha'ir, it also includes other wizard kits as well. So some of the kits include the Astrologer, the Clockwork Mage. So standard D&D wizards don't really exist in Al-Qadim. Pretty much all the wizard classes within this setting are all quite specialized. So there seems to be a lot of new mechanics for the Clockwork Mage. All of these pages are talking about the new mechanics and the specialized powers of this kit. And then there is also the Digitologist, which don't have as many mechanics. And then there's the Ghoul Lord, and then the Mage Weaver, Mystic of Nog, and the Spell Slayer. So all of these seem quite cool and very flavorful, very different, very unique to the setting. And then the next chapter goes on to the secret societies. There is a Mechanical Crab. It's surprisingly steampunky for an Arabian Nights setting. I wouldn't have thought these genres would mix very well, but that's what's been published. We are still on the Secret Society section. And then near the end of the book, we have some new spells and proficiencies. And there you have it. That was the complete Sha'ir's Handbook. Actually seems like a really interesting book. There are a lot of unique takes on the wizard class. Next we have the AD&D 2nd edition adventure called A Paladin in Hell. So this was published in 1998 and it was written by Monty Cook. It is for 4 to 6 characters of level 15 to 20, so it's a high level adventure. Now, as we know, Planescape is my favorite setting ever. Planescape was cancelled in 1998. Following the cancellation of Planescape, TSR released several planar related products, which A Paladin in Hell is a part of them. These are what I personally call them the not Planescape books, as I'd imagine if Planescape was not cancelled that these books would have been published under the Planescape banner. This adventure, A Paladin in Hell, apparently was inspired by a piece of artwork that was included in the original 1st edition player handbook. Now I started with 2nd edition, so 1st edition was a little bit foreign to me. So I personally do not have nostalgia for 1st edition. The cover of this adventure is detachable, and on the inside we have 2 maps. One is for Cold Steel and one is for the Temple of Neod in Hell. The adventure itself is 64 pages. So the introduction of the book confirms the piece of artwork entitled A Paladin in Hell, which was published in 1978. And the artwork on the cover of this adventure is an homage to the original adventure, which I'll put on the screen for you. So the overview then goes on and talks about the premise of this adventure being the PCs must travel to an obscure part of the Nine Hells. So in this adventure, the player characters are the ones who are invading the Nine Hells. This adventure starts with the players getting onto the Demon Wing. This ship is considered a part of the Abyss and it can be used to travel across the lower planes. Here we have the interior of the ship. And this adventure starts in the Abyss. As the abyssal ship Demon Wing was created by Demogorgon, we've got several pieces of very nice artwork in this book. And then you move into the Nine Hells, also known as Beator, and you arrive in Stygia, the 5th layer, which is a frozen hell. We have a cross-section of the map with the Demon Wing and what looks like an iceberg, and the temple is deep underneath the ice. At this point, the adventure turns into a dungeon crawl as we explore Citadel Coldsteel. The map is included on the inside of the cover. And you make it deeper and deeper. We have the 2nd level and then 3rd and 4th. And as you make it to the bottom of the 4th level, there is a path which takes you to the temple. And that is how the adventure progresses. There is a lot of combat in this module. And it's high level threat as well. You're looking at a lot of pit fiends, as this is a high level adventure. So if you like your adventure with a lot of combat against the minions of hell, Well, this adventure is for you. And at the very end of this module, it provides you a summary on how magic is altered in the Abyss and also the Nine Hells. There are implications on clerical magic depending on where the cleric's god is located, which is also a Planescape rule. A lot of this cross-references the Planescape product, including the Hellbound box set. So this is another reason why I think this module would have been published as a Planescape module had Planescape not been cancelled. This next one is a Spelljammer supplement called Space Lairs. This was released in 1993 and is 64 pages. The blurb on the back explains that this takes after the original Advanced Dungeons & Dragons supplement Book of Lairs. It provides 14 layers or places that you can explore that you can just plonk them into your existing game, and they all come with a mini adventure associated with that lair. Opening this up, the cover is detachable, and on the back is the Crown of Corellon, and it looks like the floor plans of an elven Spelljammer ship. So the first one is called the Good Ship Gump. Gump is a colossus that's currently floating through space, and this lair takes place literally on his back. And it says that he hasn't been maintaining his hygiene ever since being cast out into space, that there are certain things that's growing on his back. This definitely sounds like the type of shenanigans that you'll get into with Spelljammer. Second one, Deadly Riddles, Astrosphinx. The Astrosphinx is a creature, and just like the mythological creature, the Sphinx, it likes riddles. And then there is the Death Spider, and then a Breath of Fresh Air. This takes place on a man-made asteroid, and they need fresh air essentially. So all of these layers provide you with a setup. These are just ideas on how to start this quest or how to incorporate them into your own game. So they're really good if you're running a space sandbox type of game. You can slot these quests in between missions. A lot of the published adventures that I've looked at actually have a fair amount of downtime, as the DM is encouraged to create additional adventures in between the story beats, and you can just insert these between your missions. And you're typically given 3 ideas on how to set up this quest. So it's pretty easy to look for an opportunity on how to use these in your own game. There are 14 of these in this book, and if you like these, you can definitely expand on them. So this last one is the longest. It seems to be about 14 pages long, and it's called Base of Woes. And this is the one that takes place on the Crown of Corellon, which is the Elven Armada ship, where we have the map of. And we are given a piece of artwork for the ship. And this one is structured to be a longer dungeon crawl type of adventure. The next book that we're going to look at is the Spelljammer supplement called Greyspace. As you can see, this book is not in the greatest condition. Whoever that previously owned this book tried to peel off a pricing sticker and peeled off a part of the front page instead. And it seems like underneath that sticker there was another sticker for a sale price. I doubt I'll be able to remove that without damaging the page. So this book was released in 1992. I don't normally purchase books that are in this poor of a condition. However, this was advertised for a very reasonable price for the condition. I thought, I don't own Greyspace, so why not? There are 3 books of this type that were produced for Spelljammer. We have Greyspace, Krinspace, and Realmspace. I have previously done Realmspace and Krinspace in my previous unboxing, so Greyspace was the only one that I did not have. Now, unlike those other 2 books, this one does not come with a poster map. This book is also significantly thicker. It is 96 pages. It feels like a fairly sizable book. So Greyspace, along with Greyspace and Realm Space, is a crystal sphere. Crystal sphere is like the D&D fantasy version of a solar system. Now Greyspace is the solar system or crystal sphere that the Greyhawk setting resides in. So the planet of Greyhawk is called Oath. And unlike the other crystal spheres or the solar system in our galaxy, Realm Space is a geocentric crystal sphere. What that means is that the planet Oath actually resides at the center of that crystal sphere, and the sun and the other planets revolves around Oath. Think of it as if our sun revolves around the Earth rather than the other way around. And we have the distance from Oath to the other celestial bodies, the other planets in the system. So we know the planet Oath is Greyhawk. This book does not go into the terrestrial setting of Greyhawk, as you will have the Greyhawk books for that. But what it does talk about is the planet Oath in relation to spelljamming. And now we're visiting some of the other planets in this crystal sphere. So in Spelljammer, pretty much every single celestial body, whether it be a planet, an asteroid, the sun, the moon, and other satellites, they all tend to have something interesting on them that you can go and visit. So what I'm saying is that these planets and other celestial bodies are a bit more like No Man's Sky and less like Mass Effect. And what I mean by that is in No Man's Sky, you can visit all of these random planets, and each of these planets should have something interesting on there for you to go see, rather than how Mass Effect presents these planets. Some of these planets you can land on and it's just like a giant rock with mountains and craters and nothing interesting on them at all. Some of these planets you can't visit at all. So putting it into video game terms, Spelljammer is trying to go for more of the No Man's Sky approach, and every one of these planets should have something interesting to go visit. So this supplement gives you details on all of the planets within the Greyspace crystal sphere with all of the different planets, and you're given a few pages for each of these planets in case you want to go sightseeing. And bear in mind, at the time when Spelljammer was released, there were really only 3 D&D settings that was readily available to be visited, as we had Greyhawk, Dragonlance, and Forgotten Realms. Advanced D&D never really did much for Mystara or Known World because they kind of kept that separate to the basic setting. And it wasn't until a couple of years later where they brought Mystara into Advanced 2nd Edition. I believe that was 1994 that Mystara came to Advanced 2nd, and the Spelljammer product line was cancelled in 1994. We never actually saw what the Mystara crystal sphere looked like. And then we had Ravenloft, which took place in the demiplane of Dread, which was not in the prime material plane. And Dark Sun's crystal sphere was sealed off from the rest of the multiverse, meaning you couldn't get there via spelljamming anyway. So at the end of this book, we have some new monsters. There is the Hog, the Porton, and Sky King. So within this package, we have 2 Spelljammer adventures. There is Goblin's Return and Heart of the Enemy. And Heart of the Enemy can be run as a sequel to Goblin's Return, so we're going to have a look at Goblin's Return first of all. This adventure was published in 1991, and it's designed for 4 to 6 characters between levels 7 and 10. We have another detachable cover, and on the inside we have the map of the Gamaro base, which looks like a giant turtle, and the map for Kobold Arrow and Launch Pit. This adventure is 64 pages, and the premise of this adventure, as per the blurb on the back, hundreds of years ago there was a conflict called the Unhuman War between the elves and the goblins. The elves were the victors of the original war, and as a result, the goblins were driven out of that part of space. But the goblins swore to return with a vengeance one day. And that time is now. The goblins have returned with other humanoids such as hobgoblins and orcs, and the new breed of orcs called the Scro, S-C-R-O. And hence the elves sought heroes that will fight with them in the Second Unhuman War against the Goblin Alliance and the Scro. And this adventure involves infiltrating the Scro ship. As you see here, we have the Scro compound. There's a good amount of artwork in this book, and a good amount of maps as well. There's a gargantuan worm inside of a Spelljammer spaceship. Looks nasty as hell. And the NPCs are also described at the end. And a new Spelljammer craft, the Hobgoblin Scorpion ship, the Ogre Mammoth ship, and then we have the monster entries for the Scroll. It describes them as a highly militaristic, violent goblinoid race that appeared only recently. And the worm is called the Witchlight Marauder. And then let's have a look at the second part of the adventure, Heart of the Enemy, which was released in 1992. And this adventure is designed for 4 to 6 players between levels 8 and 11. This is a significantly thicker book consisting of 96 pages, whereas previously it was only 64 pages. And the other difference is that the cover is bound to the book. And there is also a poster map included with this. So let's open it up. We have a map of the shadow space. And then we have some additional maps on the other side. There's the Sohorus, the Gamaro base once again, Trigget, Yasha's Valley, Wirrit, and Min. Given that this is a sequel to Goblin's Return, the story carries over from the previous adventure, but the book does give you an option to start this adventure fresh. There is a prologue and it also provides another map of the shadow space. And then it moves on to chapter 1. Now there's a significantly higher page count in this module, but also significantly less artwork. Sometimes these modules will use artwork to pad out the page count. Given that there are 50% more pages in this book and significantly less art, it feels like a much longer, much more detailed adventure. So the blurb on the back of this book says that at the end of the last adventure, Gro found a new weapon of mass destruction, but they do not have the knowledge or the technical know-how on how to operate it. And in this adventure, they're searching for the key in order to operate this weapon. So once again, the elves have sought adventurers to help with this crisis, and I imagine that they will be the same adventures if you just carried over from the previous module. So you are racing against time to find the key before the scroll do. Spelljammer's setting is juxtaposed between terrestrial adventures, that is when you find a planet to land on and you are adventuring on land, not too different from a typical D&D adventure, and then you're also spending time in space, in between the terrestrial adventures as well. And obviously on this planet you find the Pegasi. The adventure structure has some in common with, say, a season of Star Trek, where the ensemble cast will toggle between being in space and deal with affairs in space versus landing on a planet and interacting with the locals and the scenery and the fauna and flora, potentially without the inhabitants even aware of space travel. There's some new magical items at the end, some new ships, including a paddle ship. And here we have the artwork, the Golden Warrior. And there we have it, once again, the Scorpion ship. The artwork looks a bit like a Frankenstein Pokemon if we take the body of Onyx, Scyther's wings, and the head from, what was that called, Dwebble? You know, the hermit crab one. And then it looks like our Eldritch monstrosity has gotten an upgrade. We had the worm in the previous adventure. It's now upgraded to the Witchlight Marauder. And then once again, the scroll having a new piece of artwork drawn for it, but the description is pretty much the same. And that is Heart of the Enemy. I have one more Spelljammer product to show you. This is Practical Planetology. It was released in 1991 and it was a part of a package of books that I received last month. And I knew that I was going to be getting a bunch of Spelljammer products this month, so I thought it would be better placed in this month's video. So Practical Planetology is 64 pages. The cover is attached to the book itself. This book has similar themes to Space Lairs that we looked at previously on this video, whereas Space Lairs provides you with a pre-made dungeon or a place to visit with a pre-made quest that you can slot into your own game. Practical Planetology Planetology provides you with pre-made planets and celestial bodies that you can drop into your game. How this book is divided goes back to the original Spelljammer box, where it talks about the 4 types of celestial bodies that can be found in space. They're divided into the 4 elements: earth bodies, fire bodies, water bodies, and air bodies. There is not a lot of artwork in this book, so what I'm showing you on screen is not going to be that interesting. And this piece of artwork is just a black and white version of the cover. So just to give you a rundown of the different types of bodies, using our solar system as an example, Earth bodies would be similar to our very own Earth. The planet consists of a gargantuan lump of Earth, essentially a lump of rock. And there's a little bit of air, a little bit of water, a little bit of fire associated with it. And the conditions are going to be similar to Earth. And this book introduces 15 planets or other celestial bodies that you can use. And it provides you with the name, the information about the celestial body, the climate and weather, the type of life forms that live on this place, the flora, the fauna, anything else that's interesting, the culture, what type of people, if any, live there, and then provides you a list of adventure hooks on how you can incorporate this into your game and how you can open up the opportunity to explore this planet. So next up, there's fire bodies. Our fire bodies are a bit closer to our sun. It's like a ball or some other shape that's mostly made of fire. And as you expect, it's very hot. Very few types of life forms can survive in a place like that. The base box pretty much says it's mostly going to be like salamanders, fire elementals, the type of creatures that normally thrives in a fire environment that would naturally be able to live on a planet like that. So I didn't realize until now that this book also came with a poster map. So let's have a look. So this is a one-sided poster and it says the worlds of practical planetology. So it looks like a terrain map of these planets. So these ones shown on screen look like Earth planets, Radol and Bodhi. So the book is supposed to give you 15 different planets, but I only see 8 different maps. So not all the worlds introduced in this book are going to be covered on this map, but this will give you some samples, obviously. Armistice looks like a water world. The idea of a water body is that this planet consists of mostly water, and Armistice has some landmass because obviously you want to make your world playable as well. If it's just a gigantic sphere of water, well, you might as well be in the elemental plane of water, because gameplay wise, it's not going to feel very different if you're going to be on a giant water world where it's just nothing but water versus the plane of water. The surface of the Earth is supposed to be 70% covered in water. One can make an argument that our planet is a water world, but I think the idea is the core of our planet is still made out of solid earthy material, so it still has an earthen core, whereas a water body planet, it sounds like the majority of the core is going to be made out of water or maybe ice, and there's just going to be a minor portion on the surface that's going to be covered in islands, more for the purpose of playability. And the last type is air bodies. From the write-up of this book, it sounds like an air body is most similar to a gas giant in our solar system. So for example, maybe Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, that kind of planets where it's mostly filled with gas. Yes, there's going to be some type of a core or a solid surface. Again, that comes back to playability. You want to be able to travel and explore and actually do things on this world. And I think the amount of air that exists in this body makes the weather extremely temperamental and extremely unpredictable. And the uniqueness of each of these planets is going to be in the write-up, because there's going to be different types of flora and fauna and cultures and interesting landmarks and interesting weather patterns that occurs on each of these planets. And then after that, the book goes into unusual or non-standard worlds. Now, these are the type of worlds that defy the 4 usual standard elemental making. I do wish that there were more artwork and specifically original pieces of artwork, because a lot of these are just reused. Because I feel like what's going to make some of these worlds stand out is if they provided even one piece of evocative artwork. Because even having a single piece of image as reference is going to assist with the believability and the imagination of the players and the DM. Towards the end, this book also introduces 11 new monsters. We have the Mithril Dragon, and its chaotic neutral looks like they're treating this as a gem dragon. The Azer, Flame Swallow, and Gaia. It feels like this book was really given a non-existent art budget, because not even all of the monster entries have a piece of artwork. Sky Scaver, the Strangler, And then this one, the Zat. So it says Zats are huge metallic creatures built like delta-winged planes. This kind of feels like a bit of a joke to me. Just take real-life machinery and say, this is a creature. Yeah, I don't really like that. And that was Practical Planetology. And then we have the 4th edition book, Forgotten Realms Player's Guide. This book was released in 2008. So there are a lot of divided, mixed opinions about 4th edition. Recently, 4th edition has received a bit of a revival. There are a lot more people looking at 4E with interest, and I see a lot more 4th edition content on YouTube. The one thing that's a bit less contentious when it comes to 4th edition is about the Forgotten Realms setting, because most fans would agree what they did to Forgotten Realms in the 4th edition was not good. This book introduces some play options into 4th edition, so we have the Drow and the Genasi. These are new playable races, and then we have the races that are already in 4th edition. And this book also introduces another class called the Sword Mage. Now I believe the Sword Mage was also in another 4E book called Arcane Power, which I think was in one of my unboxing videos previously. I mean, 4th edition is a bit of a blur. None of the products really stick out from each other. Anyway, as I was talking about what happened to the realms in the 4th edition, so if you weren't aware, they had this realm shaking event called the Spell Plague. Mystra was murdered in 4th edition, and when they used magic in Faerun, that they actually channel through the weave, which is something that Mystra created. Now what they didn't realize, and by they I think it was Shah who plotted to have her murdered, what she didn't realize was that the weave formed Mystra's body. So with Mystra being gone, the weave was unstable. So that caused a lot of the magic to malfunction. There are wild magic zones, dead magic zones. Certain people that are more attuned to magic have gone insane. A bunch of catastrophes overwhelmed Faerun, and they also shifted the time forward 100 years. So a lot of the famous characters that were featured in the Forgotten Realms novels in the 2nd and 3rd edition, well, guess what? Humans don't typically live over 100 years. So a lot of the characters just perished without a good reason. However, a lot of the fan favorite characters, the writers pretty much had to bend over backwards just to create them a loophole on how these humans are still alive 100 years later. So yeah, that was Forgotten Realms in the 4th edition. So regardless of how you feel about 4th edition as a game, lore-wise it was quite devastating. It also made a lot of the books from the prior editions obsolete, even when it came to lore. So after the character options, the book then goes into the different regions of Faerun. We have Baldur's Gate, everybody's favorite city. So it provides you an update of what's been happening to that region since we last saw it potentially up to 100 years ago. What kind of people, what kind of adventures that you can do in these regions. It provides just 2 pages on each of these cities or regions, and it doesn't really feel like it's quite enough to really cover what's been happening over the last 100 years. And there is Waterdeep, the largest city in Faerun. Each of the districts are given between 1 sentence to a paragraph. 1 paragraph on the people of Waterdeep, but doesn't even name any specific NPCs. And then it moves back to character options again with the feats. And then the rituals. So rituals are kind of like non-combat spells because 4th edition was very combat heavy. And then towards the end of the book, we have almanacs on the different gods. It only covers a few of the greater gods because the lesser gods are just relegated to a single line. And then a page on calendar, a page on languages and coin and commerce, and just a couple of other things on the spell plague. So I feel like one single book with maybe 2/3 of this book devoted on character options is not really sufficient to cover the Forgotten Realms and do it justice. But I guess this is the player's guide, so it's just intended for the players to use anyway. I believe that there was a DM's guide for Forgotten Realms, which I don't have. And I think that there's also a Neverwinter setting, which was released for 4th edition, which I also don't have. So maybe one of these days I'll get my hands on it. in this box we have 3 sets of cards that were released for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in 2nd edition. Wonder what's in here. One thing about me is that I really like cards, but I don't care much for dice. If you've been watching my channel for a while, this is not the first time that I've shown off some cards, but this is the first time that I've shown off some dice. All of this was listed for sale under a single listing, so these dice came with a purchase. I think they're supposed to be vintage dice, ? I don't know, and to be honest, I didn't actually care about the dice. And that's why I've never shown off dice in my unboxing videos before, just because I don't care for them. I'm okay with just using cheap dice as long as it rolls and you can read the number, I'm fine. The cards, on the other hand, I love. We have 3 sets here. There is the deck of magical items, and then we also have the deck of encounters set 1 and set 2. This deck of magical items is apparently the 2nd printing, which came in this smaller box. The original 1st printing, which came out in 1993, was supposed to be a larger box. I've never seen them in person before, so I don't actually know how large they are. All I have to go by are just pictures on the internet. But this is a 2nd printing released in 1994. And as for the decks of encounters set 1 and 2, both of these were released in 1994. As far as I'm aware of, there was no big box release for these products. I also own the deck of psionic powers. Back in 2nd edition, it seems like TSR has released a total of 6 different sets of cards. Deck of magical items has a product code of CR3, and then encounter set 1 is CR4, encounter set 2 is CR5, and then CR6 is called deck of psionic powers, which was part of my unboxing video from a few months ago. Now, this box has received quite a bit of sun damage. You see that the artwork has most of its color drained out. I think once upon a time, they would have actually looked closer to these with the gold trim and a brown background, whereas everything's all washed out in blue. Because I've already shown off the deck of psionic powers previously, I'm not going to show it in this video today. Now, there was also CR1 and CR2. CR1 was called the deck of wizard spells, and CR2 was called the deck of priest spells. I believe both of those products also got a big box release as their 1st printing, and then from 2nd printing onward were the same size as these. One day I'm going to add those 2 boxes to my collection so I can have the full set. Let's open this up and have a look inside. This is a deck of magical items. So within the box there are dividers. Let me see if I can focus the camera. Here we go, that's a bit better. Within the set we have these categories: the containers, candles, dust, ointments, incense, stones, rings, rods, staves, and wands, household items, musical instruments, magical apparel, homes, jewels, jewelry, and phylacteries, quote-unquote weird stuff, and armored shields and weapons at the end. So what I am a little bit surprised about is that you would expect that armored shields and weapons would be the largest part, but it only consists of this amount of cards. It's not even the largest category, which actually seems to be from rings, rods, staves, and wands. I believe all of these sets are complete, but then neither myself nor the seller has gone through and counted every single one of them. This is going to be a bit of a momentous task, but let's draw a card and see what's inside. I'm going to draw a card from the miscellaneous category, and it is Nephrodina's identifier. These cards are double-sided, so on the back is the description of the magical item. This highly valued item is a magical test kit used to identify potions, powders, and other alchemical substances. So blah 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 blah. The DM secretly rolls a D100 to determine the actual result. 1 to 20, the test kit is missing a vital chemical and can never identify that particular substance. 21 to 50, the user comes to a false conclusion and believes the substance to be something it is not. 51 to 100, the user successfully identifies the substance. So it seems like this item is used to identify another item, be it a potion, powder, or other alchemical thing, and you have a 50% success rate. The DM should modify the roll by plus 2% per level of experience of the character using the test kit. So your odds will also increase as you gain levels as well. So at 10th character level, you have another 20% chance of success. That's pretty good. And going back to the front of the card, we have time, duration, area of effect, and the reference, meaning if you want to look this item up from a reference book, it is cited in Tome of Magic, page 142. Let's pull a card from the largest section in this box, which is the rings, staves, and rods. And we have the Ring of Spell Storing. This is a very popular 2nd edition item. So it is usable by wizards and priests, and it came from the Dungeon Master Guide, page 150. I'm quite familiar with this item. A ring of spell storing contains 1d4 plus 1 spells which the wearer can employ as if he were a spellcaster of the level required to use the stored spells. So it has 70% chance of containing wizard spells and 30% chance of containing priest spells. Resourceful high-level characters will actually create these rings for their own use, as it will supplement their spellcasting abilities. The description continues, once a spell is cast from the ring, it can be restored only by a character of appropriate class and level of experience. So the wizard or the priest will be able to recharge this ring themselves as well and use it as a magic reserve or battery. This is a very popular item back in 2nd edition. Now I'm just going to pull one from Weird Stuff to see how weird it is. So this set doesn't necessarily contain any new information, it just simply collates all of the existing magical items in a card format. If you have a regular group of players, you could potentially hand out these cards when you hand out magic items. So the players will always have these cards on hand to reference what their effects are. So the card I pulled from Weird Stuff is the Liquid Road. It came from Tome of Magic. When sprinkled on water, swampland, quicksand, or similar surface, Liquid Road causes the terrain to harden to the density of granite, enabling easy passage. There you go, it's a miscellaneous item for the ease of traveling. I actually think this item's quite clever. I run a lot of Planescape games where travel could actually be part of the challenge, so I might use this card in my own game. So you get the idea of this product. It doesn't actually offer any new material. It is merely something for convenience or aids with the immersion of your game. Now let's have a look at the deck of encounters. Again, we have dividers in this box, but they're not labeled. So I don't know how the contents of these cards are organized. Let me just pull a random card. This card is called the Guardian, and there are also something printed on the back. Seems like there's highlighter being used. Let me just pull another one to see if this is a feature. So I've just pulled a few. There are a lot of cards very tightly packed in this box, so it's difficult to pick just one. We've got some colored highlighting, so it seems like this deck was used previously, but you know, what do you do? We have Arcane Knowledge, a Man in Black Tavern Series 3 of 3, Voiceless Bard Tavern Series 2 of 3. Okay, so the Arcane Knowledge, Danger Medium, Climate Any, Terrain Urban, Attribute Intelligence, Encounter Monster. And let's have a look at the description. Area: as the PCs relax in a large city, the word goes out through the grapevine that a strange blue-skinned giant is looking to hire a small group of adventurers as his personal entourage and be his guardians during his stay in the city. Situation: this scenario works best if the character have not encountered spelljamming craft or creatures before and are ignorant of wild space and the spheres. An arcane spelljamming ship crash-landed on the PC's planet. The ship is in need of many repairs, and the arcane has come to the city to find the equipment he needs. He seeks to hire the PCs to accompany him to the city as bodyguards and servitors while he searches for the rare equipment he requires to fix his ship. The arcane will not haggle with the party over the price of their hire. He offers a price more than fair for their service and expects an immediate answer. He will not answer any other their questions about what he is looking for or where he came from. When the arcane has completed his business, if the PCs have performed their duties adequately, the arcane will ask them if they wish to extend their service further by acting as bodyguards on the way back to his ship. The DM should play up the wonders of first encountering the idea of spelljamming, and this is an ideal hook by which to launch a spelljamming campaign. There's a species of creatures called the Arcane. They're typically associated with the Spelljammer setting, but they were also featured in the Planescape Monstrous Compendium. The card is right, it is a blue-skinned giant that have very long and thin fingers. And I think they're mostly merchants in the Spelljammer setting. So this box is called Deck of Encounters. And they're not exactly wrong, as this is an encounter, but to me this is more of a quest. When I think of encounters, I think of random encounters and monsters and combat related. So I thought this box was going to be like a box of random encounters, as in instead of rolling on a random encounter table, you just pull from the box instead. But this box surprised me because these are actually quest hooks. I guess what I'm saying is that they're actually giving me more than what I expected. If you look at the box, it says treasure chest full of over 400 encounters. That's a lot. This is a lot, and I've got 2 boxes worth. It seems like this is a fantastic resource if you're stumped for ideas, or if you're really running a sandbox and you just pull a couple of cards from this box and just read what they are and then offer these scenarios to the players. And I think this is a fantastic aid for DMs. Or if the DM is stumped for ideas, or maybe if you're short of time, look at a couple of these and flesh it out into an adventure. Like this arcane knowledge one seems to be a perfect starter of a quest to introduce the players to Spelljammer, or to pivot from one setting to another. Hey, Forgotten Realms is getting a little bit stale. Let's go off-world for a bit. And we'll just quickly look at set number 2. Let's see if they changed anything. I just pulled a bunch of cards out. We have Keep Your Guard Up, Slavers, Caught in the Act, Poison and Stone, and Breeding Farm. So for Keep Your Guard Up area, 2 separate towns are required. Situation: the PCs have had a recent run-in with lycanthropes, especially werewolves, and now their cousins seek revenge. The PCs are in an inn when a man stumbles into the pub. He begs for a private audience with the PCs. The man says he's a farmer from the next village and claims he saw mayor and sheriff the other night change into wolves and kill his brother. He's heard the PCs encounter with werewolves, and he begs them to come up to his village and help him. If they accept, they find out that indeed there has been lycanthrope activity in the town. The PCs can easily dispatch the mayor and his sheriff. They're ordinary people, not lycanthropes, and the PCs are arrested and tried for murder. The man who set them up has disappeared and is unknown in the town. If the PCs delay, the lycanthropes attack them the next night because they are impatient for revenge. At first I thought this was just going to be a run-of-the-mill quest, the one that where they're asking you to clear out some werewolves that's terrorizing the town, but there is actually a twist to it, and it tests the players themselves and their ability to reason rather than the stats of their player characters. If they just blindly follow the DM's prompt just to go for a ride, well, they're going to find out very quickly that they need to think before they act. But if your players are cautious and they want to investigate and they're taking a more cautious, thorough approach to this, they might want to question the townspeople, they might want to investigate the mayor and the sheriff, do their own research, maybe even stake out, then you can really reward your players because they're going to find out that this quest is a trap. And the NPC who offered this quest is a real villain, and you can really build a story around that. This is a great hook, and I love story hooks like this, where there are meaningful consequences, regardless of whichever option that you choose. If the PCs are being thorough and smart about this, they're going to follow the villain's plan and they're going to feel really good about themselves. If the PCs fall into this trap, you can teach them to be more alert and don't just take the word of everybody. Make sure that you do your own research. And you can still move the story forward because you have an antagonist that's been set up. And there is a lot of room for the DM to improvise and create a motive and an identity and a personality for this NPC villain. I like this a lot. From just having read a couple of these, I can see that there's a lot of potential in these boxes. They can give you a lot of ideas and keep you playing for years to come. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If there are any second edition products that you'd like me to cover in more detail, let me know down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and hope we get to hang out again in my next video.